All right, so today we're jumping into the history of ancient India. And look, this isn't just a story about kingdoms and battles. It's really about these huge, powerful ideas that shaped and then completely reshaped the entire subcontinent. It's an empire built on thought. So to really get into this, I love this quote. Ancient Indian history feels like the halfway point between a fairy tale and a Lovecraft story. And it's so true, right? On one hand, you have these incredible stories, these epic poems, enlightened princes, but then there's this other side, this eerie, mysterious part, like a whole civilization, 1,000 years ahead of everyone else, that just disappeared. And that's exactly where we have to start. We're talking about a lost civilization, the silent foundation. I mean, get this, we're talking centuries before the pyramids of Giza were even built. This is the deep Bronze Age. And these people, they weren't building mud huts. No way. They had mastered urban planning on a level that nobody would see again for literally thousands of years. It's kind of mind-blowing. Okay, just look at this list. We're talking streets laid out on a perfect grid, advanced built-in sewage systems in pretty much every single house. Think about that for a second. While other major civilizations were pouring all their energy into giant monuments for kings, these guys were focused on public works. They had standardized bricks across cities hundreds of miles apart. And the craziest part? They had a writing system that we still can't read. Not a single word. It's an absolute enigma. And here it is, the big mystery. This incredibly advanced civilization. Archaeologists find almost no weapons. None. It seems like they were a peaceful, super organized society. So, where did they go? Why did they just vanish? Was it climate change? Did a river change its course? We honestly have no idea. They just faded away. And they left this huge vacuum, this empty space on the subcontinent that was about to be filled not by more bricks, but by something totally different. So out of that silence, a completely new world begins to form, a world built on words. And you can see the contrast right here. It's a tale of two legacies. You have the Indus Valley civilization, whose legacy was physical. It was brick and stone. And it was lost. But the people who came next, the Vedic Aryans, they left behind a legacy of hymns and ideas, an intellectual world. And it turns out that was way more enduring. And the foundation for this new world was something called the Vedas. Now, these weren't just books or stories. They were a massive collection of divine hymns, sacred texts, an entire worldview, really. And get this, they were passed down orally, memorized and perfected to the exact syllable for centuries. This became the new operating system for the entire culture. And part of that new operating system was a very specific social structure. As this society grew, it basically organized itself by profession. At the top, you had the Brahmin priests. Then came the Kshatriya, the lords and warriors. Below them were the Vaishya, the merchants and farmers. And finally, the Shudra, the laborers. This structure, this social order, became a defining part of Indian society for a very, very long time. Okay, so now we get to the Age of Awakening. Because, no system, no matter how set in stone it seems, lasts forever without being challenged. And that's exactly what happened next. Around the 6th century BCE, there was this incredible explosion of new ideas. You have new texts, the Upanishads, that start asking these really deep questions about the self, about the universe. At the very same time, you have the teacher Mahavira who introduces Jainism and this idea of radical nonviolence. And then there was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama who was about to start a movement that would change the world forever. And you probably know this story. It's legendary. Here's a prince, Siddhartha, who's been completely sheltered his whole life. He's never seen real suffering. And then one day, he leaves the palace walls, and for the first time, he sees sickness, he sees old age, and he sees death. And it just shatters his world. This realization that suffering is real, it sends him on this epic quest to find a way to end it. And he does. He becomes the Buddha. And his core insight, it's so powerful and honestly so simple. The cause of all suffering is desire. And the way to end that suffering? It's the complete mastery of yourself. This was a game changer. It wasn't about priests or rituals. It was about what you could do inside your own mind. A path to freedom that was open to absolutely everyone. So now you have this incredible new idea floating around. And it's about to slam right into the world of power and politics. This is where we get to the story of an emperor's redemption. So first, let's set the stage. Alexander the Great has just come and gone from the region, leaving behind a bit of a power vacuum. And this one guy, Chandragupta Maurya, sees his chance. He's a brilliant strategist, and he forges India's first great centralized empire. And then comes his grandson, Ashoka. And if you thought Chandragupta was ambitious, well, Ashoka was on another level. He was a military powerhouse, expanding the empire to its absolute greatest extent. But he was ruthless, absolutely brutal. In fact, he earned the name Ashoka the Brutal. And that's pretty much what it looked like his legacy was going to be. And then came the Battle of Kalinga, his last major conquest. It was just a horrifying bloodbath. 100,000 people killed, and that's just in the battle itself. Think about all the others who died later. The scale of the destruction was just immense. And seeing it, it broke him. You know, when he saw the aftermath of his great victory, he wasn't celebrating. He was filled with remorse. He was completely horrified by what he'd done. He basically says this himself on inscriptions he had carved into rock, that the slaughter and the death of all those people was just deeply, deeply painful to him, a conqueror consumed by guilt. And this is what triggers one of the most incredible transformations you'll ever hear about. He goes from brutal conquest to this deep personal remorse. He embraces Buddhism, and then he decides he's going to spread a message of peace, something called Dhamma, across his entire empire. So this new policy of Dhamma, what did it mean? Well, for starters, he gave up warfare completely. He promoted tolerance for all religions. He built hospitals, not just for people, but for animals too. And to make sure everyone got the message, he carved these principles of peace and morality onto giant pillars and rocks all across his empire. It was like a public declaration that he and his empire were going to be different now. Which really brings us full circle, doesn't it? The whole story of Ashoka, it almost feels like a legend. Here's a guy who built an empire on violence and then tried to redeem it with an idea. We started this whole journey with a civilization that left behind silent bricks. And we end with an emperor who left behind enduring words. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Could an empire built on violence really be redeemed by an idea? Can something that powerful truly change the world?